Britain is a nation of animal lovers, and dogs are among our firm favourites as pets. But not all dogs start their lives in wonderful, warm family homes.
On arrival, Archie was sat in this baby car seat and Blue was in the back corner shed.
The dogs were living in a hellhole. That's about the only way I could describe it.
Large amounts of debris in the garden.
It was vast amounts of dogs being kept in a house.
Continuing through the garden, some faeces appears fairly recent and some slightly older.
It was just an awful, awful sight.
Many dogs are bred or stolen by criminal gangs who care nothing for the animal's health and well-being.
At the end of the day, this is a business, and vast sums of money are made breeding dogs.
And it's big business. It's estimated the market for illegally traded puppies in the UK can be worth up to £100 million a year.
We keep finding dogs here now. Obviously, we're going to need some assistance trying to establish where the dogs are from. Obviously, that's really difficult with people milling around and causing us a drama.
Sadly, we've seen that with the trade in puppies, that criminal gangs can make far more money from this than trading in other illicit commodities such as drugs and guns.
The dogs being passed left, right and centre down here.
And the organisation that goes behind the criminal element of running a puppy operation is exactly the same.
Okay, we have got 2 runners now. They are going to make off in a vehicle, actually.
My name's Ian Muttit. I'm the Chief Inspector for the RSPCA Special Operations Unit covering the north of England. The Special Operations Unit remit is to deal with organised animal cruelty, and that covers a number of different areas of investigations and cruelty. In particular, it's animal fighting, so dog fighting and cockfighting, wildlife persecution and badger baiting using dogs, and then more significantly over the last few years, the organised puppy trade, both commercial importation and the commercial sales around the country.
There's a shed here. Inside there are at least 2 puppies under a heat lamp.
And at any one time, we'll have 6 or 7 investigations going on nationally, and as a small team spread across the country, that is quite time-consuming.
It's December 2020. COVID is rampant across the UK. And with lockdown in full force, there is a surge of demand for puppies. RSPCA Chief Inspector Ian Muttit receives a disturbing phone call.
So this investigation was initiated through contact from a very astute veterinary practice member who identified that an individual using different aliases and different names, but was the same person, was bringing in different litters of puppies to be vaccinated. That aroused suspicions and they contacted us with their concerns.
For the RSPCA, a tip-off like this can lead to criminal proceedings, so they need to investigate the claims thoroughly.
So although we're not police officers and we have no powers in law, our investigators are highly trained and extremely diligent in considering all the material and investigating these type of offences.
There are 2 kennels here. The first kennel contains a chocolate or Yorkshire type dog.
We work to a high standard to be able to present that evidence in a format that can be considered by the magistrates and Crown Courts. And that work is hugely time-consuming and often quite emotive.
First steps involve working with the vet who'd raised the alarm to track down the new owners.
The vet practice identified a number of phone numbers and contacts. Once we had that information, our investigator, Kirsty, was able to identify the purchasers and identify then the individuals that had sold those dogs, the phone numbers and the email addresses that were used, and the locations that they'd visited to make those purchases.
A key element for the RSPCA investigators are the puppies' microchips, which contain a lot of useful data.
Microchips, they're a legal requirement. Often we see people not maintaining the details on microchips, and in any investigation where there's a theft element or dogs have been stolen, clearly maintaining that microchip up to date is vital. So they provide a really great opportunity for investigation and for following evidential chains to follow up exactly where dogs have come from, particularly when it comes to import or sale from one place to another. And then that allowed us to follow on and do further checks with partner agencies to draw in the wider links.
Digging deep into the digital dog data, it very soon becomes clear they've only just scratched the surface. Whoever is responsible isn't just operating in the UK, but internationally with other criminals across Europe.
And then we also identified that a number of the individuals had come through the port at Dover, and our colleagues at the APHA, Animal Plant Health Authority, had stopped 2 of the individuals bringing in puppies from abroad.
My name's Aled Edwards. I work for the APHA, the Animal and Plant Health Agency. My role is the head of field delivery for England. So there's work done at the ports and points of entry into the country. We work through intelligence, all focused on animal or plant health or animal welfare. Animal health and animal welfare is so important to the country, really, in terms of the diversity of the country, the economy. And so I just love what we do and the purpose of our job. So illegal puppy importation is significant because there's an opportunity to make money. There's a huge demand for animals, and if you think back to 2020 and the pandemic, pet ownership shot up, prices of animals shot up, and supply couldn't meet the demand. So we saw a surge in animals being imported, and the animals were cheaper to buy in Europe, and therefore people bring in and getting higher profits. So in this particular case, it was Border Force that stopped a vehicle and found 5 puppies in the back of it. They were not being transported in the greatest of conditions. They were dirty and a fair bit of smell in the cage they were transported in. And the animals looked smaller than we would expect them to. 2 of those animals were taken to the vets because their temperatures were raised and there was concerns around their health and their welfare.
By February 2021, a pattern is emerging. It looks like a serious criminal enterprise, requiring a major investigation. And so, the RSPCA launch Operation Earth. Following up on their initial inquiries, using mobile phone numbers and email addresses, the team begin a search for puppy sales advertised on the internet.
It was identified that the adverts were taking place on Free Ads, Pre-Loved, Pets for Homes, Gumtree, and there was in total 47 phone numbers used across those adverts and 39 email addresses, which gives you an idea of the scale of the puppy dealing operation. So from the adverts and the information and intelligence that we were receiving, there was a number of family members that were identified as part of this network. And at that stage, our investigator, Kirsty, approached Gwent Police in order to try and obtain search warrants to further investigate.
But before they can go to the courts to apply, the police and RSPCA need to build a picture of their main suspects.
So identification of the individuals involved in this puppy dealing gang was really difficult. All of the individuals involved had the same surname. Often family members were being used, family members' email addresses, family members' phone numbers, all of those related back to these same 11 people.
Alongside sharing the same surname, many of the 11 suspects share the same first names as well.
Seeing these mass use of names and addresses in order to confuse enforcement agencies to try and reduce the risk of it identifying any one individual person is not uncommon. So trying to establish exactly who was really difficult.
The main investigating officer, Kirsty Withnell, hits on a genius idea to work out how everyone is connected.
It was actually Kirsty, she knows someone that works for a probate company, and obviously they offer up this service to identify who was who, how they were related, and then also how the people whose email addresses or other phone numbers were used were related to the primary offenders. Because understanding those links when you're talking about conspiracy is crucial.
The strategy begins to pay off, and the police secure a number of search warrants to raid addresses both in Wales and Hertfordshire. But while the teams are planning their raids, news comes in that throws the investigation completely off kilter.
WM +47.
Go ahead.
Yeah, we got the van.
A victim contacted Gwent Police after an attempted break-in and theft of dogs.
We located a couple of litters of pups.
As a result, the police pursued offenders using, among other things, a police helicopter, which followed the offenders back to one of our primary addresses associated with the puppy selling.
Other different varied breeds that are just sort of in compounds. Nobody's obviously claiming responsibility for them, so what we could do with the RSPCA just to scan.
Good. That little house that you came out of, that's where all the people from the Mitsubishi went into. Nobody managed to get over the gates, so all the people seem to be from there. They seem to be like the ringleaders.
It's April 2021, and Gwent police are trailing some potential dog nappers who appear to be connected to an organised criminal puppy selling gang.
They turned up here, banged on the door. They've said they were here for the dogs. She said they're my dogs. One of the males have said don't open the door, we're gonna kick it through. And then when she's said they're ringing police, they then left.
Police aerial surveillance tracks the suspects to a traveller site near Newport.
The driver is still in the Ford Focus, just information, but if you go in behind him, he can't get out.
It soon becomes clear the suspects have led them to the heart of the puppy farming operation. Tactical Flight Officer Jeff Smith was in the chopper that day.
For this particular case, we were asked to search for a vehicle involved in a possible dog theft. A white and black van, which would be quite distinctive. Person's gone to the front door of a house and overheard on the Ring doorbell then mentioning dogs in the back garden. So there's concern that this van was involved in the recent crime of dog thefts within the area of Newport. Then we saw all the dogs that were involved in this case.
Lovely. If you've got local units on route to this block, please.
So to me, it looked like various vans parked together and then sort of back gardens then. And within that back garden, there were various pens and lots of dogs within these pens. I could see about 20 people within the site. Police officers drove in and 2 people then decided to run off. And I wasn't sure what their intention was at the time, whether it's to warn other people or to escape.
That lad that's running, stop that van, the lad that's running, it's just run past you.
So the fact people are running away from marked police vehicles is a big giveaway that they're either wanted or there's something amiss. So the priority was to try and get those people as quickly as possible.
A guy that's running into the site with a black top and a fluffy hood, you just stop him.
Yeah, we've got him on camera,
But the police and RSPCA have a problem. They raided the address 3 days too early.
Just been contacted regarding this. We were looking to execute some warrants at that location in relation to some dog theft. I'm going to try and get hold of the OIC shortly. She's got contact with the RSPCA.
So with any of these types of investigations with multiple addresses and multiple offenders, they take quite a long period of time to plan and prepare and to put in place all of the necessary support in terms of logistics, vehicles, vets, staff. And all of that was planned for later on in that week. However, this incident brought a lot of that forward. As a result of this, we had to request assistance from our local colleague, Chief Inspector Spence, who has had to react really quickly and put together a team of officers to attend the location with the police that day, which is not an easy task.
Chief Inspector Elaine Spence heads to the site to begin gathering evidence for the puppy farm investigation as part of Operation Earth. But what she discovers is so shocking, the immediate need becomes the welfare of the dogs.
I had very little information other than the police were in situ and that there were numerous dogs on site. So I arrived at the location and met with my colleague. As we were walking through, we could see numerous dogs in cages. They were being kept in makeshift pens. There was a great deal of feces around. Quite a few of the dogs didn't have any water at all available to them. In fact, I presented water to some of the dogs and they drank really quite thirstily, which would indicate to me that they hadn't been offered water for quite a significant number of hours based on the fact of how thirstily they drank. These situations are very upsetting, but I'm there to do a professional job.
So not uncommon in puppy investigations, we see the dogs kept in poor conditions. Fundamentally, they're a commodity that's for sale and their welfare is not a priority. And it was no surprise when, on arrival at this particular location, Chief Inspector Spence and her colleagues found animals kept in squalid conditions.
The condition of many of the dogs is worrying, and the task in front of Elaine and her team, enormous.
There were dogs in cages, they were in vehicles, there was dogs roaming around. We had to consider how we were going to manage such a large number.
I actually sent a photo of the scene to one of the dog handlers so they could see the gravity of the situation and the different areas that would require being searched.
We keep finding dogs here now. Obviously, we're going to need some assistance trying to establish where the dogs are from. Obviously, that's really difficult with people milling around and causing us a drama.
Elaine calls on colleagues to help get the dogs locked, scanned and transported to a veterinary surgery for checkups. Then they need to search for evidence to identify any offences under the Animal Welfare Act.
So this is the location that we came to. The police were already present, and on the site there was numerous accommodations, and the site actually stretches much further back. But the majority of the dogs were kept to the left-hand side of this location. So we began a systematic account of all the dogs at that location. We took photographs when they were in situ. At the same time, we were contacting other colleagues to come and help us to transport these dogs to the veterinary surgeons for them to examine the health of those dogs.
One dog, a miniature dachshund, catches Elaine's attention.
Yeah, a few dogs here. One of them is in the van with people that are not admitting to owning. Looks very poorly.
As we were going around, there was one little dachshund that was being kept in a cage inside a transit van. This puppy was particularly subdued, just lying down, didn't really want to sort of engage, which was of a grave concern. It was really, really flat. The dog was really flat. We were fortunate that that dog could be dealt with very quickly because it was showing signs of being very unwell. So that dog was moved out to get it to a veterinary surgeon.
Along with the dachshund puppy, there were other dogs in distress.
So altogether on the site, we removed 21 dogs, a lot of dogs to deal with in one go. There was a couple of large dogs. There was a St. Bernard, a couple of Labradors, but on the whole, they were very small dogs, which made it slightly easier to transport them out of there fairly quickly. We had been made aware by the police that there was a potential that some of the dogs may have been stolen. So whilst we were going around, we would check with microchip scanners to see if there was microchip details on the dog. Then the police would subsequently be able to look for those details and match it up to any dogs that they believed had been stolen. It was a long night.
With the warrant executed there and then, 2 arrests are made, the site is searched and evidence seized.
We have to be very thorough in the logging of all the animals on site because that is evidence that's going to be produced to a court. As soon as the transportation arrived, we were having these dogs loaded up, then moved off, and all the paperwork transporting with them. The Special Operations team of the RSPCA then took over as it was part of a larger investigation.
Over the next 10 days, RSPCA Inspector Kirsty Withnall explores the evidence discovered, which helps them make links to other suspects in the gang.
Mobile phones were seized, paperwork was seized, which implicated suspects that we were already aware of within the puppy dealing operation. And whilst there was other addresses and locations identified, it was clear that the link was this primary address and that many of the occupants of these other addresses also resided at the primary address.
It was then time for phase 2 of Operation Earth.
It's 0601 on Thursday, the 24th of April 2021.
So the warrants at various other addresses in the local area where sales had taken place was then planned and executed. That brought in the remaining suspects and identified them through mobile phones, through paperwork, rental agreements, and the local authority were hugely useful in terms of identifying who those individuals were. And then that material was all fed back into the investigation and cross-referenced with what we already knew.
Dog bowls with water in, indicating that dogs have been here recently.
But there was an issue. because they raided the puppy farm site only a few days before.
Sadly, the interaction earlier that week with the police and ourselves, this criminal gang had clearly been tipped off that we may be aware of their activities. So when the warrants were executed at the other remaining addresses, it was clear that some of them have been cleared out.
There's nothing in the kennel.
Large amounts of debris in the garden. There are 2 dogs. One of these, brindle and white, named Archie, male. And the second one, name of Blue, which is a female. And then in the shed, an old mattress on the floor, some shavings in the corner.
The RSPCA has raided various addresses connected to an organised criminal gang of illegal dog traders.
In the back garden area, there is evidence of dogs having been here. There's a new kennel set up to the left-hand side. There's a set of drawers containing procolin, which has been administered by Newport to a Mr.
The Special Ops investigators process everything they have seized. The scale of the enterprise is huge.
So in terms of organisation, this particular network was all linked as family. But as we went through the investigation and started to analyse mobile phones, it became clear that it was highly coordinated. All of the members were involved in some way. The import of puppies, the transport of puppies, the provision of paperwork, taking to vets, using different aliases, the placing of adverts, the arranging of sales. That takes a lot of organisation, purely because of the sums of money that can be made.
Working with APHA at the port of Dover, they were able to build their case, tracing the activity of other members of the gang.
So on this particular case, the RSPCA were looking at the selling of puppies and identified some of those that come through the border from another country. They'd identified the ones that were being sold on, and therefore they come to APHA to make sure they comply with regulations and if we had any evidence. And that's when we were able to provide during the prosecution statements of what we had found and the issues that we'd identified.
And on this particular occasion, APHA had cause to stop individuals importing puppies under the pet passport scheme. Some of those dogs were seized because they were in such poor conditions. Others were allowed to carry on their journey. And subsequently, we established that those dogs had then been sold on for a profit, when in fact they'd been declared at the port as being their own pet animals.
Some of the unscrupulous traders would masquerade as being pet travel scheme travellers, so they can go underneath the radar.
This particular gang was basically trying to source puppies from any location, so it was a mixture of import, commercial purchase, breeding, offering to buy them off people and then bouncing the payments, so they took the dog away and the payment never went through, and potentially theft as well. So it was any opportunity to sell any puppy or dog that they could.
11 suspects are identified and enough evidence secured to get them charged. But now the real investigative work begins to build a watertight case of fraud and animal welfare offences. The gang had made well over £300,000 during their reign.
It became apparent that COVID was playing a huge part in terms of the value that was placed on these dogs.
We've got evidence that prices almost doubled during that period. There's thousands of pounds to be made regularly in each pet.
The RSPCA has always encouraged people to be at a property to see the mum and the pups inside the home environment. Organised crime groups have cottoned on to this.
At the time, COVID lockdown restrictions were slowly being eased, but were still in place, and that was being very much used by the offenders to reduce interaction at addresses, to bring dogs out onto the street and to meet people elsewhere from the location. What that does is take away a lot of things that a prospective purchaser may be looking for, and that was used quite a lot in this particular case.
The rewards for this criminal gang were huge, but the cost to some new owners was heartbreak and huge veterinary bills.
Sadly, in this investigation, we do see a huge impact on the victims. They purchase a dog as an addition to their family to give them some positivity. Instead of being able to enjoy, those early days of owning a puppy, they're ending up with a dog that's very ill in the vets, costing them thousands of pounds.
If you do buy a puppy from a disreputable source, you are then setting yourself up for the future. That animal may not live long, or if it does live long, it'll need a lot of veterinary treatments.
It really can be quite traumatic to take these statements from individuals that are victims.
It takes 2.5 years to collate all the evidence and get a court date to bring the gang to justice.
One of the key elements was mobile phone interrogation and the reports that that gave. And what the mobile phone showed was a clear process of advertising dogs for sale, suggesting that dogs were homebred, were microchipped, were vaccinated. And then also was the messaging around arranging the sales, so inviting people to come and see the dogs. The manipulation of the purchasers by saying that the dog was there living with them, a quiet family, etc. But then also in the same phones was the arrangement of dogs to be transported, commercially imported, the planning of payments, the arranging of splitting of funds between the individuals. And the financial investigations then show the clear volumes of money moving through the various bank accounts concerned.
The evidence is overwhelming. Nearly 100 dogs were sold illegally by the gang.
This fraud is in excess of several £100,000, and in terms of individual dog sales, you're looking at £3,500 per dog in some cases. 6 of the defendants pleaded guilty to the fraud charges, and all 11 individuals pleaded guilty to the animal welfare charges that were brought.
Sentencing ranges from 18 months to 3 years inside, plus rehabilitation and community orders. All are banned from keeping dogs.
From an RSPCA inspector's perspective, one of the best outcomes is that animals are removed from these individuals, and quite often they receive fairly lengthy, if not lifetime, bans on keeping animals. And that means that those individuals can't harm any other animals in the future.
By having strong sentences, we can send a really powerful message out that the UK takes animal health and animal welfare really seriously. We'll take hard action to make sure those standards are maintained.
14 of the dogs found at the Traveller site were rehomed.
Knowing that I've assisted those animals, they don't have to endure being kept in those circumstances anymore, and that they've all been successfully rehomed. I'm sure that they're living a far better life than what they were living there.
Kirsty, the main investigator, through tenacious and detailed work, brought down this OCG along with other similar operations, where gangs have cashed into the tune of more than £3 million. And for Elaine, there was another reward from this investigation.
Sometimes you think there is a little bit of fate that makes something happen, because the little dachshund that was very, very poorly, I doubt that that little dog would have been alive had we not arrived 3 days earlier. That little puppy spent the best part of a week being cared for by veterinary surgeons. The good news out of all of that, the puppy did make a recovery and has since been rehomed. Out of all the little dogs that needed help, that one did.
Two years earlier, in January 2022, the RSPCA received an anonymous report of puppies having their ears illegally cropped at an address in Lancashire.
So in this case, it was a member of the public that contacted the RSPCA, which allowed us to take this action to investigate cruelty and ear cropping.
Local Inspector Will Lamping is assigned the case.
I'm a RSPCA inspector on the field investigation team. I've been doing the job coming up to 9 years now. The majority of my role is investigating potential offences through going out and gathering evidence from the field, be that visits to vets or executing warrants, interviewing suspects and then building case files.
For the RSPCA, ear cropping is a serious concern. Between 2015 and 2022, the RSPCA saw a 2,493% increase in reports of ear cropping to the cruelty hotline.
And just to put it into context, in 2022, we had on average 1 report of ear cropping coming in every day.
It's a cruel practice and has become a fashionable trend despite being banned in the UK since 2006.
It's really upsetting seeing images of puppies that have had their ears cropped. It is really cruel, it causes a lot of suffering. And for some of these puppies, the way in which it's carried out is barbaric. Done in a really crude way with kitchen scissors, for example, without anaesthesia. This is a completely unnecessary procedure.
Unfortunately, ear cropping is still very relevant in some communities. We particularly see it in those that breed bull breeds and want to sell those puppies as hard dogs. They are looking for that intimidating look.
So ear cropping is a procedure whereby either the ear flap is changed in shape. So for example, the ear shape may be cut and altered and pinned so that it actually then grows upright. Or in some cases, ear cropping can actually end up with the entire ear flap being removed such that the top of the ear is flush with the dog's skull.
I personally don't understand how anyone who has a small puppy in their hands can take a pair of scissors to that dog for purely cosmetic reasons.
And social media is sadly fueling the demand for such amateur surgical mutilation.
So we're seeing these dogs being glamorised, being celebrated, and we are unfortunately also seeing some celebrities and some influencers that have cropped dogs, and they do feature them on their platforms. So people see these dogs with cropped ears, they think it's a natural look, when that isn't the case.
Following the tip-off, disturbing evidence drops into Will's inbox.
We also received pictures showing the ear cropping of the puppies, which was really unpleasant to see, as you could see the puppy with its ears still bleeding, lying in a cage, looking totally out of it and just in real pain.
The team need to act fast, so reach out to Lancashire Police to help secure warrants.
When a call like that initially comes in, first thing you're thinking about is the clock and whether the puppy is still going to be there, because at that stage we don't know if puppies are being brought to this location for ear cropping and then going away again. So you do ideally want to get there as quick as possible, because if there is a puppy there that's still injured, as soon after the event as it happens is when you're most likely to find it.
In cases of ear cropping, the RSPCA Special Ops team pursue with the full force of the law. In recent years, they've achieved convictions against ear croppers where puppies have changed hands for between £3,000 and £5,000.
We know that there are individuals that will pay quite a lot of money for dogs with cropped ears, and unfortunately where you have that desire to sort of supply a particular type of dog, it often goes hand in hand with irresponsible or illegal behaviour, and sadly dogs always end up being exploited as a result of that.
The offences that we can identify that have been committed in this country, we will prosecute, because the amount of pain that it causes to the puppies is huge and causes them from a very early age be distrustful of people.
It can have real long-term impacts. So there can be wound infections, for example. It can really impact upon the way in which they behave, so how they signal to people about how they're feeling and also how they signal to other animals.
A month after the anonymous tip-off, in the early hours, the police and RSPCA raid the address.
Police! Police! Police!
When we executed the warrant, we didn't find any puppies at the address, and the animals that we did find all seemed to be okay and had their ears intact. We did, however, recover 2 phones from the suspect that then went off for interrogation. So it is concerning when we have pictures of animal abuse when we don't find that puppy, because the question is, where is that puppy now? Has it gone elsewhere? Is there other puppies that are also getting their ears cropped?
Empty-handed, attention now turns to the phones.
It's frustrating because you build up this intelligence picture and then you think we've got a real opportunity to kind of stop this behaviour taking place. But of course, the intelligence picture isn't always going to be perfect, so you do have to take a step back and consider if this suspect is actually involved.
In the months since the failed raid, Will and his team have been busy trawling the suspect's 2 mobile phones.
There was thousands of images and videos to trawl through. It took hundreds of man-hours. I was sat in the office going through these videos and pictures one by one, trying to piece them up together. It is difficult sometimes to view the kind of content that we found.
What they unearthed shows a spread of this criminal cruelty.
We found pictures of ear cropping, but also pictures and videos of large array of wildlife crime. Everything from foxes to badgers to deer. I realised that this was a much bigger investigation than I'd originally anticipated. There was all sorts of contacts and people involved in the planning and taking part in the kind of wildlife persecution that we were seeing. So that all gets documented and passed to our intel team as well to help them build pictures about what's going on.
So it's really important that we do have inspectors like Will Lamping that are investigating what are really horrendous crimes for these individual animals, tackling the cruelty that is associated with this illegal and unscrupulous behaviour.
Floyd loves it, man, doesn't he?
What we have seen is unfortunately a lot of fueling of this on social media.
We were able to focus in on 2 specific videos. The first of those videos showed a fox in a location that we believe was a garage being set upon by 2 dogs. What was really distressing about that one is that it happened in someone's private garage.
Not too hard. Check it, go on.
Which means that they will have gone out, caught the fox, taken the fox back to this garage, and then let it go for the dogs to attack it there. I don't know how long that fox was in that cage for, but it's hard to imagine how that fox felt being trapped in that cage, waiting for people to come with the dogs to attack it.
Go on about 23, boy, this.
That video, it shows the sick enjoyment that these people were getting from it.
Watching this kind of material does have an impact.
It's really unpleasant to go through those videos and pictures of animals being abused, especially on the scale that we found. It's something that you never get used to, but ultimately I put myself into a mindset that's about looking for evidence, looking for connections, trying to find the facts that will lead to potential offences, so dates, locations, the same dogs being used.
Grab its tail, check it for your pup.
If you focus on the animals themselves, it is just heartbreaking to watch.
The cruelty to the fox is very clear, but the RSPCA is also concerned for the well-being of the dogs.
The dogs are whining. They themselves are also being attacked back by the fox that's effectively fighting for its life, and ultimately are likely to end up with injuries themselves.
Armed with the videos and other digital data, the Special Ops team has enough evidence to get a second warrant.
This time we found a lot more evidence. There was 2 lurcher-type dogs, the first of which had a lot of cuts to its muzzle and legs, which is quite distinctive of an animal that has been used in wildlife persecution, particularly when they are going after animals such as foxes. The fox will often bite on the front legs and the muzzle. We also found a second lurcher that was totally lame on one of its legs. It later turned out that that animal had a fracture that was not being treated. Along with those 2 dogs, we also found 3 bull breed type dogs that had their ears cropped. One of these still had the stitches in.
The suspect is arrested on site during the raid, but denies any responsibility and refuses to allow the bull breeds to be signed into the RSPCA's care.
These dogs are quite valuable. They quite often want to advertise these as potential breeding dogs or generate more puppies from the dogs for them to crop and sell.
All 5 dogs are sent for treatment to safeguard their health and well-being. It takes 16 months for the case to make it to court in February 2024.
Once I've completed my investigation, I then submit a case file to the RSPCA prosecution department. It was felt that both of the videos showing the foxes being attacked by the dogs were evidence of offences that we could prove that the suspect had committed. It paints a narrative that is hard for him to avoid, in that we have a picture of him holding a deceased fox in the same location as the video is taking place. Not only that, we have him named during the video.
Grab its tail, check it for your pup.
The evidence is so compelling, the suspect pleads guilty.
Along with pleading guilty, they also signed over the 3 remaining bull breeds, which was fantastic as it's meant their welfare was secured as well.
The suspect is sentenced to 2.5 years in prison and received a lifetime ban from keeping all animals.
Personally, this is the longest sentence that I've had involved in one of my cases for wildlife persecution. The bans that were handed down are a great result because that lifetime ban stops the suspect himself from being in control of any more animals.
It's really important in these types of cases that we have individuals being given custodial sentences, then this is likely to deter this sort of crime.
Ultimately, I think it sends a message that if you choose to use dogs for these kind of activities, that you face never being able to own another animal again, which is as it should be.
It's the knowledge of knowing that you will be caught and you will be given a tough sentence that has that really important deterrent value.
This case will definitely be one that stays with me. The sheer amount of suffering that was contained within that mobile phone can't be understated. At the end of the day, owning an animal is a huge privilege, and if you can't be trusted with that, then ultimately you just shouldn't have responsibility for an animal at all.